Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of CrowCast Tuesday Night Live, brought to you by no one, but previously brought to you by Smith Partners Real Estate and Down to Earth Electrical and Harvest the Fluorio and Hardware Unboxed and a whole list of Patreon people that we're very, very grateful for. If you do want to get on board and sponsor the CrowCast for a week, a month, or the season this year, just let us know. Drop us a DM on Twitter or send an email to sponsorship@aflcrowcast.com. Peter and Nikki, how are you both?
I'm very well, thanks, Fiend, and your good self?
Well, I'm good. I've got a decent supply of toilet paper. I'm all good.
Excellent news. We're down to a one-sheet ration in my home.
I went shopping before anything happened, so I was fine.
Yeah. Let's not get political tonight. Let's keep it to the footy, shall we? And let's, Nikki, try and keep it to our target 40 minutes, shall we?
Hey!
Yeah.
I noticed, what was it last week?
You talked longer
52,
than what your allocated time was. You talked longer than your allocated time for the men's games. So I had a much shorter time period to contend with. Thank you very much.
Let's have some news from the AFL, shall we? What's going on in the AFL? We got some teams locked down. We've got Gill coming out and saying we might play in front of no one. It's all happening in the world of the AFL.
Well, it is, and I think that it's the disease on everybody's lips, and it'll filter through to the AFL. Well, it probably already has, and that was the test that was taken on one of the Fremantle players, and who has subsequently tested negative.
How's Sam McClure outing that person?
He's a dickhead. He really is a dickhead.
When is he actually going to get pulled up by somebody? Because that's a breach of privacy. What the hell?
It's disgraceful. And what was the point? I mean, there was no, the story wasn't the player. The story was the disease or the virus, and so it's just pathetic.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a negative. So that's okay. The only other thing related to that, as you say, GWS, again, the media taking some license, saying, "Oh, GWS are in lockdown," and really all it is that they just they're not going to encourage the players to be doing signings and things like that. So I think that it's lockdown, I think, was a little bit extreme, but that would suit the narrative. Discussions, of course, about the state of play if we have the situation where games may need to be played without crowds, and in fact, as we see in Italy at the moment, the Serie A has been shut down completely or suspended completely, so there's no games, no nothing. So there is some serious things on the horizon. The NBA is making plans. I heard LeBron on the radio today saying that, well, they want to do that, that's fine, but he won't be. If there's no fans, he won't be playing.
It's very selfish of LeBron.
Who knows what his contract says? I suspect it'll have to. But anyway, I mean, these are all things that are going on with the virus, and so it's a little bit difficult at the moment, but to really nail it down to exactly how it's going to play out. But it seems that everybody is preparing themselves for some form of disruption.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'll just say, somebody who works closely with an area that is very actively discussing the virus and plans, etc., is that it's the logical thing to do, and it's actually the smart thing to do, is to put plans in place, because it is serious.
Vardy in the chat, and Vardy's the only person in the chat, so I think chat is actually on lockdown at the moment. I think we've quarantined chat. J-Mac's there, arrived. He's infected now. But Vardy makes an excellent point. Imagine how different umpiring decisions will be without partisan crowds in their head. Isn't that
interesting point?
I mean, we probably hope it doesn't get to the point where we have empty stadiums, but it will be very interesting to observe.
But you know what the good thing about it will be? We'll actually be able to hear the players on the field.
Well,
because that's the one
you
thing.
Say it's a good thing.
I know they're going to have to put it on the delay. I was sitting in the pocket at the Marsh series game, and because you're that close, you could hear the commentary from the players, and I quite like to hear that, because you get to understand a little bit of structures. You also get to understand which players are the most vocal, which ones are the most helpful for their teammates, in the kind of way of making sure, that they're in the right positions and they're doing the right things for the team. We do get a little bit of that at the SNFL, which Pete would know about, going to them. I think that would be interesting, but I do think that they would definitely have to have the slight delay to...
Well, I think the bigger issue is that they're going to, instead of miking the umps, they're going to have to mute them, because we already hear them far too often. And raise the ray without the crowd drowning him out. That could be more than anyone wants to watch. So anyway, there is that. What else is going on? It's probably a bit late to the party, but I meant to raise it last week, I think, but I didn't. I can't remember whether we did. The polypharma thing with the post-mortem diagnosis of CTE. Did anyone get around Sam Newman's commentary around that?
I never listened to him.
Just that it was fairly blasé about the whole thing.
Well, no, he's actually come out and thrown doubt on the diagnosis. So he's basically saying, I never noticed anything when I was playing with him, and it's a bit of sensationalism and rah. I think it's time that Sam sort of switched off Twitter and turned off Channel 9 and basically faded off into the distance, because he clearly has no education around CTE whatsoever. And, one of his good mates, well, apparently, one of his associates is Johnny Barnes, and we all know how much Johnny Barnes is struggling at the moment with issues post-football. So I know that Polypharma is probably the only player that Sam really was in awe of during his playing career. Obviously looked up to him greatly. But it doesn't serve any purpose to downplay this diagnosis, because it's such a monumental diagnosis in the grand scheme of things in terms of how we treat concussions and head injuries going forward. And it's just a narrative that belongs with the Flat Earth Society, really.
I think, to be honest, Fane, I honestly don't think that... I think he's a lone voice that... Do you think his voice has much influence? I don't... I mean, and I ask that genuinely. I don't think it does. I think that most people just think he's, like you say, he's just a bit of a, I don't think anyone really takes Sam very seriously, and it's a kind of, ridiculous comment that, he's become well known for. He's just contrary for the sake of it most of the time.
Look, you're right. I think it's just another signpost in the gradual decline, or the rapid decline of Sam Newman, really, and I think we need to just he
is buddies with Dank as well. He was one of those defending Stephen Dank, so make of that as you will.
Yeah, so was Graham Corn, so I wonder what Cornsey thinks about Polypharma's diagnosis.
I actually really like that they did test, because it is a massive issue. We do know that it's the Football Federation in the UK are starting to look very strongly at it because of the heading of the ball. So I think if they can get that data, enough data, that's actually going to change the game of soccer, because I think they will have to ban that particular move because it'll be too dangerous.
I think that what the reading I did is that they're certainly, if they haven't already done so, I think they're looking at making a number of amendments to junior soccer.
Yeah.
And I think that they're taking they'll certainly be taking some steps for kids under, I think, 12 or 14, and taking the header out of the game at that level.
And then I think reducing it in training and things like that.
Yep.
That's similar to what they do in the US for gridiron for NFL, is that they have the junior teams where there's less of those head-on collisions, which happen there. So they amend the game for the juniors. They do it a little bit here as well, because, you've got the Oz kick with the no tackling, and then it's slowly brought in once they're being taught correctly how to do it, fingers crossed.
That's one area where I disagree with completely. Pete, you've watched a fair bit of junior footy, haven't you? With your young lad. Have you ever seen a kid get injured by a tackle?
Funny you mentioned my kid at Preseason just the other day got a nasty sling tackle just in training. He had to come off. So look, I have. I've seen. Yeah, I've seen. I'm a real. I've got a real bee in my bonnet about the sling tackle. I saw a bit more of it in the Marsh Cup than I really would like to see. I feel like it's still not being stamped out. There's still too much of it. And the one that my kid went through, and I saw it clear as bell. And you just got another kid who's quite a bit, and it's the same thing, the same problem. What they do is that they grab both arms, so the person being tackeled's got no way of defending themselves or propping themselves or anything, and then he just gets body slammed into the turf. And even though in that instance he went down kind of on his back with the initial impact, the flick of the head then still means that he flicks his head on the ground, and it was quite a nasty one. But anyway, sorry, I'm the wrong person to ask about sling tackles. We
do have
passion.
I think we have similar issues in the women's leg as well, and it's something that I've raised since the AFLW inception, is that the tackling needs to be umpired stronger. Anything that comes close to crossing the line or is incorrect should be penalised, but they seem to have had a directive to let the play go, which has caused a huge increase.
I think it's a really good point, Nikki, because in all my time coaching junior footy, I never saw one kid get injured by a tackle, and back then, probably as opposed to now, Pete, back then kids could, especially in the amateur league juniors, could tackle from under nines. So essentially from the moment they'd stepped onto a field. School footy was a bit different. School footy was usually about year 4, probably year 5 actually, before they were allowed to tackle. See, my way of thinking, rather than banning something, you're just delaying the process. I'd rather teach them properly and umpire them strongly.
Yes, absolutely.
I dislike sling tackles as much as the next guy. They're not required. The object of a tackle is to catch a player with the ball and not allow him to dispose of the ball. And back in the 50s, 60s and 70s, the secondary objective was to hurt the bastard. But that's not part of the modern game, and I think maybe there needs to be some sort of law changes around bringing a player to ground. I'm not sure, but I actually wish that we would. Well, there's two issues probably. There's the issue of a shortage of junior numbers, which means you get broader age groups, which means you get a bigger disparity between the big kid and the little kid, which is always dangerous. And second to that, as I mentioned earlier, I just wish that we would have more engagement with coaching to teach the kids to tackle correctly, that is to drop their knees once they tackle.
Agreed.
And for the umpires to umpire it extremely strongly so that there's no lateral movement in a tackle. You're grabbing the guy, if you want to bring him to ground, you do it with your own momentum. You're dropping your knees and bringing him down with you rather than doing the whole windmill. So... But anyway, that's a side issue. But speaking of which, the MRP was quite busy, but everyone except the sling tackler got off. So Will Hayes got done for his sling tackle on Dan Houston. He's going to miss the first round. But Viney, Cameron and Hayward got off. I think all three of those were probably fair enough, and I think the suspension for the tackle was probably fair enough.
Yeah, I had no issues out of the MRP this week. It all seemed pretty, reasonably sensible to me. So, yeah, no issues.
None with... there was a bit of consternation about Jeremy Cameron which I thought was pretty unfair, actually. The guy's running towards the boundary, the guy in front of him goes over, and Jeremy Cameron's, 6'8" or whatever, and we know that the grounds slope away towards the boundary as it is, and he just happened to catch the guy with a knee in front of him. But I didn't see anything wrong with that. Did you, Nick?
I didn't see it, so I can't comment. But if you're commenting on Cameron overall, he's never displayed that kind of "I'm going to get you" kind of thing. Opportunity.
No, but he has a lot of accidents.
He plays hard. He does have a lot of accidents,
and he has a lot of awkward falls and a lot of awkward moments.
Nobody's taught him how to fall properly.
I didn't think there was. I agree, Fane. I didn't think there was anything to go him about there, but I think I think Jeremy Cameron walks a very, very fine line with his inverted commas awkward movements.
Yeah, well, and maybe that's the reason why some of these commentators were a bit less forgiving on it than what I was. Maybe they had, they had similar views of Jeremy's conduct. But anyway, that was that. Aside from that, not a lot going on at the Crows. Not a lot going on. Doesn't seem to be any further movement on the move to the Aquatic Centre.
There was, though. There's two things on that. So if you are an Adelaide Football Club member, you got sent a link to the City of Adelaide.
No. Port Adelaide
survey,
have the Centrelink supporters.
You were sent a link.
I sent a link. Sorry, I thought you said sent her link.
Sent a link.
You're wrong side of the Torrens.
I spoke too fast for you. So that is actually open till 5 o'clock tomorrow to go and have your say, particularly if you are for the move. Don't sit back and think it's just going to happen. Have your say if you think it's actually a good thing for the clubs going there, or if you think it's a bad thing for the club to move to North Adelaide. It's open. Go and have your say on that one. We did have some news from last week because Daniel Jackson arrived and did a nice little presser, I thought.
I thought we covered that last week, but anyway, keep going.
No, we didn't because we said he was going to arrive, but we didn't cover his presser because that was the day after. It was on Wednesday.
Okay.
We
talk about his presser.
Well, I actually thought it was fairly impressive. I was a little baffled that some people can't listen properly and thought it was just another job for the boys because he somehow knew Fagan, not realising that he played with Duncan Kellaway.
I was going to say Kellaway's the connection, isn't he?
Yeah, that's the connection. As soon as he was kind of named, I thought, oh, that's how we found out about it. But then to find out that his partner is actually from Adelaide and had moved back here was quite refreshing to see a bloke follow his partner to the city instead of the other way around.
Maybe he's the reacher. You got the reacher and the settler, Nick. Maybe he's the reacher.
Who knows?
Right.
But I was quite impressed. I thought he interviewed very well. He felt there was some interest. There was some questions kind of sort of towards him as to, exactly what he's going to be doing. And he basically said, well, I don't know yet because this is a new role. I have to get in, have to see what needs to be done, see what I can do to help. I really liked the fact that he kept straight batting when they kept talking about the Richmond culture. And he was like, well, the culture that you're talking about now is completely different from when he was actually there. And you don't look to copy what other people are doing. You can take bits of it, but it's essentially you need to look at what is right for you in that space and develop it yourself. And he had a very strong message around that, which resonated with me quite well. I hope it resonates with the playing group and the greater footy department, and we can hopefully see a few steps forwards this year.
So on the, and we're all about positivity this year, aren't we, Peter? But on the
we're very, very positive.
Absolutely.
Learnings. I think we're going to hear a lot about learnings. This year.
I wonder if he's going to do any work with the back office, because one of the laments about the review was that it was very footy ops focused, and the view was perhaps that some of the issues weren't footy ops but actually administrative. I wonder if he's actually going to tackle the broader cultural issues that may or may not exist in head office and not just those within the football department. I don't think he's got that mandate, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think he does.
And that's a bit of a pity. I've got to say, it's a bit of a pity because I don't think you can have two parts of the club not singing from the same hymn book. And I think if you're going to instill a culture in an organisation, you can't do it at the coalface and not also do it at the executive level. That's my opinion.
Well, I think that plays back into what you always, what was always your concern about the review, and that was that it was only ever directed at the football department, and that's where it was quarantined. There was never anything that went past, that line of demarcation, and so I guess that then plays into, well, if the football department review thought that they needed that extra person for culture, then that's where the problem lies.
It's a worry from the point of view that a lot of those committee-type situations like selection committee and whatnot, they have a direct report to a board representative. Rue's chairman of the list management committee is chairman of, I think he's on something else.
They sit on selection.
Yeah, so, I mean, again, if you've...
sit in on selection.
Yeah, if you're going to run... if you're going to run those committees in the... Peter, you eating?
No.
Oh,
sorry.
If you're going to run those committees and those operations within a certain cultural backdrop, and you have an external person that's actually running that committee that is not part of that program, to me it just seems to be a bit of a disconnect. But anyway, we'll see how it plays out. I think Daniel's appointment is positive. He seems like he's fairly switched on. I don't think he's got a mandate. There was a lot of I don't know yet, which unsettled me a little bit, Nicky. I didn't have the same take as you. I felt like there should have been some sort of picture provided to him, but it sounded like he either wasn't disclosing it or there wasn't.
I think it's the first one.
Well, let's hope so.
To me, he comes across as quite smart. He was very measured in his responses, and there were some pauses that made me think he's just going through how do I say this and what do I actually reveal?
Ticking that over, yeah.
One of the things I like listening to a lot in terms of interviews, particularly with football people, is not what is said, but what isn't said and how they answer questions, because you can figure out more what's going on by those two than what they've actually been told to say and taught to say.
Yep. What else is going on around the Crows? I don't think there is anything else apart from talking about last week's game against Gold Coast. So why don't we get into that, shall we? Did you both see the game?
I saw it on replay. I was involved in junior football myself on Friday evening, but I did sit down on Saturday and watch the replay.
I was at the ground and I was down one end, so it was. Yep, I was down in the southern pocket.
That's almost Victor Harbour.
Quite a few goals. Yeah, it almost is. Yes, yeah. Quite pleasant sitting under the trees on your chair.
Yeah. Look, I thought it was an interesting hit out. I don't know whether it was necessarily indicative of the end product, and I felt like a few things were tried during the course of the game.
Agree.
I did like some of the individual performances, and there were a couple of that concerned me. But before I go on my merry way, Pete, first of all, what were your overall impressions, and what did you like and what didn't you like?
Well, from a positive point of view, there wasn't. I'm not going. I won't. I've got probably one little negative that I'll probably have a chat about later. But generally speaking, looking at taking a positive take, I thought that there were some. I thought we had some really, really nice moments in terms of our ball movement, and I really, really liked the the collection of midfielders of Seedsman, Smith and Atkins. I think those three playing closer to the ball with their foot skills, I think, is a plus. I think that, I'd rather have them closer to the contest and distributing the ball than, say, Brad or Matt. So I thought that was really good, and I think that's something that I think we'll see more of. I think those three will have much more midfield time than they have had in the past. I thought Benny Davis was terrific. I thought he had some really, really classy moments where I think we really saw what he is capable of doing. He just needs to do more of it for longer. But he had some really, really nice moments, I thought. Overall, I thought that, I thought we were pretty efficient. I think when I looked at the stats, our inside 50 conversion was much more efficient than Gold Coast's. I thought that statistically we beat them, I think, fairly comfortably on the outside, even though they won on contested possession. So I thought that there was some, if what they're trying to do is play a slicker, a ball movement style game, possession sort of style game, then I think that what I liked in terms of the direction is that there's at least an attempt there to identify who the best distributors of the ball is, or are, I should say, and to try and get those distributors, closer to the ball than maybe what they have been in the past, and to try and get the ball moving with good skills. And so, from a positive point of view, they're I guess some of the things that I took out of it.
Nikki?
Just to back up on the first point that Pete made there about the Smith Atkins and Seedsman in the middle, what I really liked was Campo no longer being in charge. We didn't get crouch line. We got two of those slower midfielders and a quicker pace one in terms of either Seedsman, Atkins or Smith. I did see some complaints that Jones was played more as a half forward, but so was Sloane. But you need to take into account that we had a really good look at Jones in the first Marsh game. He got a very solid hit out through the middle. So the coaching staff has seen what he can do in that setup. We didn't get a look at Smith and we didn't get a look at Seedsman because they missed those games. So they had the extended runs. Atkins was a little better than what I thought he was going to be. My biggest disappointment will be if Gibbs is in the round one team and doesn't spend the entirety of the year in the SANFL. I liked some of the things we were trialling, and it was very obvious that we were testing a few things. Gold Coast rested players after the first half, so they had fresher players in the second half, and I thought that showed a little bit. Some of the delivery to our forwards I thought was still poor. Few people were complaining about Tex bodying his opponent. It was often the case he got on a break, got on a good lead. The delivery was over his head, so he had to bulk, and he knew he was all of a sudden his defender was going to be on him, and he had to try and outbody to get it. Whereas if they passed it to him on the beautiful lead in the space that he'd gotten, it might have been a different story. Like you, Pete, I really like Davis, and I have for quite a while. I thought he was very smart on the field. He had a lot of really good voice as well in terms of directing traffic, making sure the areas were covered. A couple of times he made the mistake and he fought like buggery to fix it up again, and I love seeing that in a footy player. To me, that's a basic thing. You stuff something up, you go and you fix it. And he's just got some lovely tricks. The other issue I thought
bloody hell, Nick.
was
Keep going.
just one more thing is that I like the look of the forward line, but Gold Coast was very conscious of Crocker, and so he's got to try and work out how to get past two defenders, because I think that's going to happen quite a bit.
Yeah, I'll probably go along with most of that. I think special mention to Darcy, even though he didn't have a huge numbers, I just felt that he showed us what a presence he can potentially be up forward. I'm not sure whether long term he and Tex in the same forward line is workable. I'm a bit worried about Tex, to be honest with you. I think we might see a little bit of the demise of Tex this year, depending, I think, on how the tools come on. I thought Davis showed enough for us to persist with him as the first option in terms of that third tool, sort of Mitch McGovern type role. He, plays up or down, so he provides a bit of X factor there. The one he was only there for a short moment, but the one that I liked up forward was Mackesy. I actually liked the look of him up forward, and I know they only put him up there for the last few minutes of the game, but he got to a couple of marking contests and a little bit more luck and a little bit more confidence. He probably would have stuck 2 marks near the end there. And
he reads the play beautifully.
He really does. He read the flight of the ball in both those situations because they were heavy packs, and he almost took both attempts uncontested in the end. I think we've got an issue with our tall forward. I don't think either Frampton or Himmelberg have obviously stuck their hand up. And with Geordie Butts sitting in the twos, looking like he could hold down a spot, it does beg the question: do we play Fraser up forward? Fisher up forward. I guess that's something for the selection committee to work out. They have shown their hand by starting him down back, but the fact that they even thought about throwing him forward means that it's part of the conversation, and I don't mind it at all. Brodie Smith can never, ever, ever not play midfield for the rest of his career.
He was so good.
His pace, his delivery, his presence around the ground. Yes, it was a pre-season game, but many people have been commenting for the last 3 or 4 years the fact that he should have been getting more midfield minutes, and I think he vindicated the fact that even if he's not what you'd call an elite midfielder, he's certainly, in terms of our squad at the moment, he provides something that very few other players in our squad provide, and that's a bit of explosive pace and a penetrating kick. I thought both he and Seesman were very good. I was really disappointed with Brad Crouch. I felt like it was a game that he could have had far more influence, and I think it's Brad's big challenge this year is not to accumulate big numbers, but to have big influences in games. And I continue to worry about his composure in tight, but that remains to be seen. Down back, I thought we were pretty good. As I said, Mackesy, I thought, did reasonably well. We seem to have a bit of bounce off half back. Not many people have mentioned Rory Laird, but I thought Rory Laird was a little bit more decisive this week. His disposal was a little bit more creative by foot, I felt. I felt our overall game style was very kick-oriented, and it's interesting because we wanted to spread out a defence fairly quickly, and yet it wasn't the usual bang-bang kick it into the forward line transition that we've seen from the Crows in the past. What it was very much about spreading the ground and opening up corridors into the forward line, but still giving our midfield and our forwards enough time to get into position and actually provide meaningful contests. And I just wonder whether that's part of Nix's game plan, that yes, we do want to explode out of defence, but we don't necessarily want to always just go 2 kicks and hit the square. Sometimes we just want to spread the ground and open up the play and provide some space for forwards and transition players to move into. And so some of the transition plays were very good. I think we've got a way to go with our disposal, but I don't mind it. And if people keep making comparisons, obviously, to GWS, and it's very much what GWS do. They tend to chip around, load up, and then go bang, sort of thing. So, look, overall, despite the fact that we actually lost the game, and the start wasn't fantastic, And I do agree with you, Nick, about Bryce. So terribly disappointing. The other one, my disappointments, I guess, apart from Brad Crouch not having as much of an influence as he should, Bryce Gibbs just doesn't look engaged anymore. And the other one was Wayne Miller. Wayne Miller, I don't know whether he's had a heavy pre-season, but he looked very heavy-legged to me.
He thinks he's got more time than he does. I think that's what it comes down to. He thinks he's got more time because he's been able to do those little evasive things before. But they know about him. They know that he's now the prime mover out of halfback because there is no Smith to try and lock down on. He's going to get more of an option. I did see some people, they were calling, put him back in the midfield. But, Fiend, you and I have talked about this ad nauseum, that he gets lost in there. He needs to be able to straight line the ball. He needs to work from behind the ball. And, that when he got caught, run down, we could see it coming a mile away. Was there no talk? Or he just wasn't listening? He just thought, oh, no, they're not going to catch me. I was like, dude, there's some quick players in other teams. So, yeah, they are. It's just he was just slightly off the boil.
Speaking of run out of halfback, can I just put my little gripe in, which I mentioned at the start? My gripe for that game is that I cannot believe that we had Will Hamill sitting on the bench, stripped and ready to play, and they obviously elected to go with 22, fair enough, but you've got a kid who's played a full season in the SANFL. He's a number 30 draft picked in that 2018 draft. He's played good football through the SANFL last year. He doesn't get a run in Marsh 1. He plays very well in the under-23 game against Port. And then for some reason, we get him stripped and ready to play and going out and have a kick before the game, and then just don't play him in Marsh 2. Now, I can't believe, and I cannot see any legitimate reason why we wouldn't have given that kid a run around just to see how he went in senior competition. I was very, very disappointed by that.
Wholeheartedly agree, Peter.
And particularly the way that there was some stinking happening on that half-back line.
Yeah. I mean, as a coach, I would have thought, I'm not sure what the value of giving Bryce 120 minutes of football was. I think, a half a game from Bryce was enough to tell you where he was at. And we left at the end of that game still not knowing where Will Hamill's at. And I thought the object of the experiment was to play the kids. So anyway, I mean, look, I agree with you on that one. That was a bit disappointing.
And especially when, Gold Coast played 26.
Yep.
I'm not quite sure why we decided we had to limit ourselves to 22. And, even if you look at the other guys that were on the bench, I mean, guys like Himmelberg, they'd had Marsh 1. So, why? So here we are. We're now Hamill's second pre-season has come to a close, and we've seen him in 2 under-23 games.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's piss poor.
Well,
anyway.
And if he was sore from the 23 game, then there's question marks about his fitness, really. He should have been able to get up for that one. And I don't think that was the case. It just seems to me to be the only... I mean, you're right, Pete. If you suit him up, then he's ready to go. Otherwise, you just don't bother picking him.
He was ready to go, and he was fit as a fiddle, and he's not a rookie pick from.
No,
he's picked 30 in that 2018 draft.
Yeah,
I was surprised that they sent Talia back on because Butt started to warm up.
Yeah,
and I thought, with Talia, he's our key backman, and he landed bloody hard on his coccyx. Just, we're in the last quarter. Yes, we were a little bit of a mess down back once we lost him to direct and control that back line. But I would have thought to leave him on the bench. I thought they should have brought Butts on or that was an opportunity of, okay, let's go smaller. Let's, play around a little bit and see what happens. And they could have brought Hamill on. Or that there were some opportunities there in that last quarter, particularly with that injury, to Talia that I think he should have been parked on the pine.
Look, the other disappointment, Luke Brown's form concerns me a little bit. I thought he got towed up by Sexton and a couple of others. I hope he hasn't got signed a long-term contract fever. Caught from David McKay. But he looks a little bit off the boil at the moment, and he's a bit of a linchpin in our defence in terms of locking down a small forward. So I hope it's just a case of him easing his way into the season. But look, I think at the end of the day, we did see some early signs of what Matthew Nicks is looking for. We've seen some new faces and we've seen some old faces in new positions. And, you know, I don't think it's going to be a case of we're playing an under-23 side every week. I think we'll still have a mix of seniors and juniors, but I do see, as I mentioned earlier, I see the demise of one or two players, Gibbs, as we've talked about. How did you guys see Tex's game? Because to me, I found it very concerning.
Oh, he wasn't great, but he was in a different role in the sense that he was the second ruck. And I think that, you know, they've got a decision to make about, you know, it's an important structural piece that they've got to decide upon. The fact that it's been incredibly disappointing that neither Himmelberg or Frampton have demanded selection. And so they've got to sort of say, well, are we going to stick with that second ruck forward structure, even though we don't really have a player in form to play it? Or are we going to pick a team on full and move away from that structure that, you know, that we know and love? And if we do move away from it, well, then how are we going to operate that? And so they've obviously pinned it, trialled it with Tex. And so, you know, to be fair, I suppose you have to. I guess we've just got to acknowledge that he was playing at times a fairly different role than what he would normally be used to. So that's, I guess, some reasoning. I guess I'm not quite sure that I much fancy going into a game with him in that role. I'm not quite sure he's the answer, but I'm not sure quite. You know, if he's not the answer, then you're back to playing probably Himmelberg, does he really deserve to play? Well,
yeah, but sometimes, especially during this phase of squad development, Pete, sometimes you play players that don't deserve to play. And I don't know what value there is in giving a 32-year-old, 33-year-old a new role in the twilight of his career to that extent. I mean, I don't mind Tex pitch hitting up forward in the ruck for a few contests, that's fine. But he's not a second ruckman's arsehole, and to me it's just his body doesn't hold up at the best of times. You start putting him up against ruckman and he's not going to last anyway. No,
just on that though, he often wasn't going up because he'd pick and choose his time as to when he was going to. If they're running at him, he didn't. Yeah, and then he often got the ball and he either dished it out or he gave a really good delivery. He becomes an extra midfielder.
Yeah, no.
Tex has got a very good football bearing.
Nikki, that gets found out very, very quickly. That gets if they know that Tex is not going to go up.
I'm trusting Nix's word that this was just a little trial. They're not going to do it every game. It was just a test to see how he went, and they wouldn't do it against every team. They'll pick and choose when and if they do it. I think that's what it was. I think it was also a kick in the butt to Himmelberg and Frampton.
It worries me that it was
haven't been good enough.
It worries me that it was even part of the conversation, to be honest. The fact that they are looking that broadly for a role to accommodate Tex or to have him in the team concerns me. The guy's a lead up forward. There's obviously overwhelming pressure, and rightly so, to play Fogarty, which means we've got two clones playing the same role, and eventually we're going to have to give Fog the reins up forward there, and then obviously the question then is, what do you do with Tex? And I don't know whether pinch hitting in the ruck and playing high half forward is the answer for the Texan. And, you know, neither Frampton or Himmelberg have knock down the door. You're right, Peter. But I think you play the blokes you've got in the positions that they're best suited, and then you make a call at the end of the year as to whether they're the right personnel. You know what I mean? Especially at this stage of squad development. And I think both those lads deserve a run at it, and I think they should just be played in those positions and let go. And if that means that Tex has to bow out gracefully, well, I think so be it.
Yeah, no, that's a fair call.
Anyway, we've got a week's rest now, which is probably good. Just quickly, we don't have many injuries. We've only got Dede, who's about 2 weeks away, and Riley Knight, who's about 4 weeks away. So we're looking all right. Some teams, bloody hell, Brisbane have got none, but then you go down to Collingwood and Carlton and Essendon, they've got horrific injury lists. Even Hawthorn for a change aren't looking that great. Melbourne obviously not looking that great. So, it's probably one thing that we've got going for us. And I always think injury lists are a sign of how a team's going to start. So on that basis, look out for St Kilda and Brisbane, I reckon, early doors.
Yeah, I think so. And I think if you've got some young players, especially they're just breaking through, and you see that sort of enthusiasm, and you quite often see those sort of teams bang on, 3 or 4 wins early in the season before falling away. And if we didn't have the fixture that we've got, I'd almost say that we might have been potentially able to do that, but we've got a horrendous... After Sydney, it's
it's a bit rough.
Dark times.
It's a bit rough. Despite the venue, I don't think the venue's going to make much difference this year. No. All right. Now, Nikki, you've got about 2 minutes on the AFLW, and quite frankly, Nikki, that's all it bloody deserves. Go ahead.
The one kind of positive for me out of it was that last week I complained that Clark had his one game plan and he stuck to it. At least he tried some things this time. Didn't quite work, but he tried things. And he moved the team around and made some changes. As soon as Phillips was out and we had to bring Chelsea Bedell back in, that game was well and truly lost. I do think the player who actually needs to be dropped but won't is Marinoff.
We just don't have the personnel.
Yeah, we don't have the personnel, and I don't think she has really improved from the first season.
She's been up for a long time, Nikki.
She has, but she's also had she doesn't play games during the off season.
Maybe so that's an issue.
A chance for it worked last year, but she's still got that dinky high kick. She still doesn't look. She just kind of, I have to wheel onto my left and I just kick it out in that direction. And opposition teams are getting to know that. They've always got players tend to covering it. She's not as damaging because they are the layered high kicks.
Well, I think what Eb's shown...
Somebody needs to teach her how to kick properly.
Well, what Ebony's shown, I think, is that she needs class around her. And in the absence of a couple of really key players this season, we were hoping that she would fill that void somewhat. And not saying that's beyond her, but I just don't think she's that kind of player. She's that bullocking, bustling sort of a player who's going to get you a lot of ball, but like you say, Nikki, probably not the quality distribution. I have a ton of admiration for Marinoff in terms of how she plays the game. I think...
So do I. She is one of my favourite players, but she frustrates me because you can see where those issues are and then they haven't been corrected.
Yeah, but
she doesn't seem to know how to correct them. Well,
if she's only playing 10 games of footy a year, Nick, you're not going to correct them. You're not playing enough football. You are the player that you are, and you're going to turn up and you're going to do what you do. If she was playing 22 rounds of footy and being coached every week and all the rest of it, then that's a different kettle of fish. But if she's rocking up for AFLW season, playing 10 games off the back of a 2-week pre-season, what you see is what you get from her, and what you get is a pretty honest performance usually, but she can only be part of the machine, and I think she needs to have classy players around her.
Yeah, well, one of the things we've been very obvious this season with her is that unless she can stick a tackle, she's not interested in doing defensive pressure. I think that's the main thing that's really annoyed me about her this season, is that she's close enough that we know she could close and put that pressure on. She might not get a tackle, but she can put the pressure on the opponent that's just waltzing away, and she just tends to jog behind them going, oh, they've got the ball and they're going forward. Okay, bye, kind of thing. So I think
2 flags will do that for you.
No, I think she's actually injured.
Well, that's a possibility as well.
I think that's what's going on. And if that is the case, then actually rest her.
Well,
I know we're probably going to get beaten by more, but get some development into those younger players.
Well, the season's still alive, Nick. As unlikely as that is. So. I mean, the GWS game this weekend is a huge one because we can basically leapfrog them. Not that it's likely. I wouldn't have thought it would take a Herculean effort. And realistically, I don't think as I said to you the other day, I don't think we're contenders, to be honest. So,
no.
But, the club will play the season out as they should, and they'll pick a team to win, and they'll try to make finals, because they do have a couple of younger players, and the experience in finals will be good for them. So,
and we've seen that this year with Nikki Gore. She got her couple of games last season at that speed. She went back and finished off and played in a premiership for South Adelaide, and she's done that step up this year. So for me, that's what getting those players in, those younger players, and giving them a chance. Yeah, they're going to get a bit smashed at times, but at least we're not Richmond.
No, well, I mean, Richmond get a point because they're just new, but certainly St Kilda have done quite well. Just to round off the AFLW, Nick, I would have thought it's between North and Brisbane this year. Do you reckon?
I think it might be.
Brisbane have overachieved, but they've sustained it, so they have to be considered.
They have, and they do have a very good coaching group there, and there is a lot of really good Queensland talent. I thought, and I said this at the start of the year on the podcast, I thought they might be the only team to go through a season not winning, because they had so many injury issues, and with the lightning strike to Jess Wushner. I mean, one day rest her in game 2, not against us. I think we would have had a very different season so far if that hadn't happened. They've just kind of gelled together quite nicely there, and playing that good team footy, which they have always displayed. But I do think it's not like we were the standouts last year. It was very obvious we were the standouts. I don't think there's a team like that. I think there can be surprises on the day. Yep.
All right. Well, look, that'll wrap up a bit of a short one on the AFLW this week. We do have GWS. Go on.
Just one final thing. Very sad to see our record gone from the grand final, but that was a great crowd at the MCG on Sunday, and go the Aussie.
Oh, let's claim the record as the
local sporting.
Well, no, the percentage of possible seats. So
yes,
we filled the stadium. They only got 86, which is only 86% of possible attendees. Anyway, look, that'll do. That's pre-season done. Nikki, that's you done. We've enjoyed having you around, haven't we, Pete?
Yeah, no, terrific. certainly better than
the enthusiasm there, Peter. I felt it.
Certainly, Nikki. I certainly defer to your expertise on the AFLW. No question.
I try.
Critical input.
You sit there very quiet, Pete.
How's the back of your hand going there, Peter? Because that was very backhanded. Look, no, really, Nick, thanks. Your insight into the Women's League is invaluable, and I hope our listeners have appreciated it during the pre-season. Obviously, there's 1 or 2 games to go, but we must defer to our normal lineup. So we're bringing
Back to
Donkey off the...
arguing about it with on Sunday with Macca.
That's right. So we're bringing Donkey back next Tuesday, and I'm sure that everyone's missed the Donk. He's been on Messenger with me with all these bright ideas about what he's going to do and all that sort of stuff, which is fantastic. He has, all credit to him, in the first 5 minutes of being back from leave, he's arranged a nice little guest for us, which is quite nice. I'm not sure when exactly that'll happen, but it will certainly happen within the next couple of weeks, and it could be an ongoing guest spot on Tuesday Night Live, which will be quite fun. But Nikki, thanks very much for your time, and we'll see you on the wrap show after round one. Peter,
and
you
maybe some cameos when fill-ins required.
Well, I'm going to try and avoid it, to be honest. There is Macca and Cam, so... all jokes aside, thanks very much. So next Tuesday will be our first round preview, Tuesday Night Live. Obviously, Tuesday Night Live is going to be our live and interactive show, so not a huge amount of analysis. Pete, a bit more of a rabble, which is far easier to control, to be honest with you.
We'll keep trying to get it punchy.
Well, yeah, we've hit 56, 57 minutes. My God. We'll see how we go next week, won't we, Nikki? So next week, Tuesday Night Live, Thursday, might be Friday actually. Keep an eye out for the first episode of The Rev Up, which is obviously our preview show of the big game next or Saturday week against the Swans. Until then, thanks everyone for joining us on the chat. Try to stay safe. Difficult, interesting times at the moment, but we hope we can give you a little bit of a relief from that. So until next week, we'll see you then.
See you later, everyone. Bye.
Night all.